Hello. I play drums in a band called Hornicopia. We're about to add a piece by Chicago. The tune is called Movin' In, and I would like to show you how I notate horn parts. Let's jump in, shall we? Here's a picture of me and my very fetching wife of 25 years. That's Wendy. First thing we do is get into iTunes, grab the tune Movin' In, and I'm going to drag that into Transcribe. Transcribe with an exclamation point. I'm going to start putting in measure markers in this, attaching them to this sound file. Every time I hear a new measure go by, I'll hit the letter M. 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 When we get done with the introduction here, I'll add the letter S, signifying a new section. M. M, now S. S. Back to M.
It's hard for you to see.
And that's enough for what we have to do right now. I'm going to resize this, drag across all of these, go up to markers, compute tempo, and see that the average tempo is 35.3 beats per minute. Now, every one of those clicks that I was hitting actually represented 4 beats, right? Because I was just hitting bar lines. Each one has 4 beats per bar. So I'm going to take 35.3 times the 4 beats represented by each of those numbers, and we come up with 141. Quarter note equals 141. That's good to know. That's how we will set up our finale file. So I have actually done a transcribe file on this tune already. So I'm going to bring up the one I'm working on. You can see that this has a great many measures in it, and that's the one I'll be working from here today. And now we bring up finale, which is my notation software of choice. A couple of my musician buddies, and I mean literally a couple, 2 guys said, "Kev, you should do a tutorial on this." And I thought, well, if I've got 2 guaranteed views, yeah, I'll do a video tutorial. We're going to take this file and turn it into scroll view, size it for the maturing transcriber. You can see that I've been working on this. Before you do horn parts, you absolutely want to get some harmonic information into your chart. So I always start with the rhythm parts. Okay, notice this. So down on transcribe, I have letter A, I have letter B. Then I have a gap 8 bars later, and I have a gap 8 bars later. Then I have letter C. Why do I have those gaps? I'll tell you why. Between A and the 8 bars of B, I'm going to repeat that 16-bar phrase. If I leave gaps here in the transcribe file, I know that something happens at that gap. In this case, it's the second statement of A. I don't want to put a new section marker on my transcribe file, because then the section markers on transcribe would no longer agree with the section markers in finale. And I used to waste time and energy trying to figure out where I was in the sound file relative to the finale score. So I make sure that all of my rehearsal numbers in transcribe correlate exactly to my rehearsal letters in finale. All right, we're finally ready to get into the beef of this tutorial, horn writing. We are going to start adding notes into the horn parts. On the second statement of this repeated section, this is verse 2, where the horns enter. Let's listen to a 4-bar phrase.
We're trying so hard to make the grade. Yes, we know it.
We've got 2 instruments in unison. One of them's clearly trumpet, and the other one that can play in that range is the alto sax. So let me enter these notes. All right, those are the pitches. But we have some decisions that we have to make. Beats 1 and 4. How long are they? Listen.
We're trying.
Ba-boo-da-da. Obviously shorter than a full value quarter note, right? So we have to determine how we're going to notate in a way that is clean looking on the page and conceptually obvious to the person who's going to play this part. Before we make that decision, let's lay down a mental framework about the world of articulation. I'm going to put a bunch of quarter notes in here. If I was playing saxophone in a horn band and I saw a series of quarter notes without any articulation over them, I would give them a little bit of separation. Ta, 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 something like that. The way it would, if you were getting really specific about notation, the way I would perform it is something very close to this. Ta, 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 ta. All right? That's the standard approach for playing quarter notes that don't have articulation if you're in a jazz or a pop setting. But this note that we're trying to emulate is still shorter than that. So we're going to try something else. To get a note shorter than that, you could notate it this way. Now it's an eighth note plus an eighth note rest. Ta, 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 ta. Sounds about right. It's getting close, right? Close to what we're emulating here. Another way to get that same performance is to take quarter notes and put staccato markings over them. Ta, 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 ta. Okay? Ta, 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 ta. I just sang a staccato measure. Ta, 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 ta. That was eighth notes plus eighth note rests. Sound the same, right? For our purposes, we're going to call these essentially interchangeable. All right? Let's continue to build our mental framework here with regard to articulations. Here's another bread and butter articulation that you need to really appreciate. The accent mark. When we accent a note, we put more stress on that note. If you're a horn player, the way we do that is by pushing more air through the horn in the same amount of time that we would normally give that note. So here's quarter notes without anything. Ta, 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 and measure 19. Ta, 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 ta. A little bit of separation still. Quite a bit more air, right? Notice when I say ta, ta, the note ends because the air ends. I'm not shutting my tongue back into its closed position. I'm going ta and leaving the tongue away from the teeth, okay? Here's another articulation that is bread and butter for the funk and jazz arranger. These are often called tent accents because they look like a tent when they're up here. I always put them above a note because you put them down below a note and now they don't look like tents, do they? I mean, they might look like a tent that I built on a windy day at the campground, but this is the way a tent's supposed to look. The word tent is usually used in jazz and pop. Marcato would be used if we were in more academic circles. When I see this as a horn player, I'm going to push even more air through the horn than I did on an accent. Plus, I'm going to end that note with my tongue. Here's regular accents. Ta, 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 ta. Here's marcato. Ta, 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 ta. T-A-H-T. T-A-H-T. Ta, ta. Okay? So I'm going to sing through this line here. Ta, 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 ta. This is a more dramatic, more bold. It's more in your face. It just got more of an attitude behind it. One more essential articulation before we talk further. A lot of people will call this tenuto. Some people use the word tenuto to describe something somewhat akin to a fermata where you're actually making notes longer than they should metrically be. I have a real problem with that, and since some people think that's what tenuto means, I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying I don't want to use the word tenuto over that because I'm not messing with the value of these notes. To me, this is a legato tongue. This is, and if I'm talking to a band, I say, I just do this when I want that. I don't even have a name for it, but it's a legato full value quarter note. Here's regular quarter notes. Ta, 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 ta. Here's these. Do, 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 do. I'm trying to keep the air moving 100%. The only thing breaking the air is the flick of the tongue to initiate the new note, but the air is not stopping here. I'm going to do this again. Measure 17. Ta, 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 ta. Measure 21. Do, 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 do. Okay. Here comes another important articulation. Accent marks with this bar that I don't have a good name for. This would mean full value quarter notes with the accented amount of air coming through the entirety of that quarter note. So back here, 17, ta, 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 19, ta, 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 22, ta, 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 okay? These don't have to be any louder than these, but they have to be longer. Are you with me? So, with our new little arsenal of articulative devices, we are ready to figure out how we want to notate this line. Listen to it one more time.
We're trying so hard to make the grade. Yes, we know it.
So, bop, boo, da, bop. Beat 1 and beat 4 are roughly the same length, but beat 1 is clearly a louder, bolder statement. It's the strong beginning to a line. Beat 4 is a delicate ending to the line. Here's what I'm doing. Putting the marcato accent on beat 1 and the staccato on beat 4. That is going to be the same treatment for each of these 4 bars. So let me copy that information over, just the markings. Whoops. Do that again. Take all 4 of those bars, bring them down here. Like I said, it's 2 instruments in unison. That phrase happens a total of 4 times. At letter B, we get another bit of information that we have to deal with. Letter B. Here's right here.
Although our task is never done, you know we know it.
Trombone is playing the roots of the chords very boldly. And they are the roots, and he's playing dotted half note values. Listen to the way he's articulating.
Although our task is never done.
That's a really bold statement. He is playing full volume all the way through the note. Here's the way I would prefer to do it, is with our good old accent with the bar, indicating fat sound and full duration. Another way to get the same performance out of your trombonist is to have him play sforzando on each of those notes. That also means a fat sound at full duration. I personally prefer the articulation, so I'm going to do that right there. Here's another little note about horn bands is the default volume that a horn person is going to take into a new chart is probably a strong forte. At letter A, it is not forte playing, it's a mezzo forte. They are playing behind the vocals, so we will add that. Over here at letter B, that guy's going to see that articulation. He'll know exactly what to do. I don't need to clutter the page with a forte marking. He'll know what to do. Let's go on to letter C. Listen for 8-bar phrase. That's all we're going to do. I'll throw those notes in and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got 8 measures worth of material starting at letter C. Let's take a look at it. First of all, it is letter C on Transcribe, so we got to make it letter C on Finale. There we go. When I add pitches, I always do it in concert pitch, display in concert pitch. But now that we've got the pitches in there, Going to remove that so everything goes to their transposed part, and we will start putting in articulations. You can see this first 2-bar phrase of the trombone is really high. Now my guy will be able to play that just fine, but I actually am not at all sure that the recording has trombone in it. I don't think the trombone comes in there. Nonetheless, it's the beginning of a soli. You hate to have a guy sit out the first 2 bars of a soli. It just feels weird. So I'm going to let my guy do that, knowing that he'll do just fine on those high pitches. Okay, let's listen to the first 2-bar phrase. Dot, doo, da, tow. Dot, we know how to do that. That's our good old marcato accent, the tent. We're hearing a little bit of a bump on the and of 4. That is a super common, just kind of an understood articulation. If you're playing jazz and you're playing the and of 4 and it's tied across the bar line, you're virtually always going to give that a bump. Here is another accent that I could hear quite clearly, but here's something exciting. We have a fall at the end of that 2-bar phrase. Happens right here. The fall that I like to use, it's way down toward the bottom, 75 on mine. To put that into all the measures without grabbing it again, just do none but articulations. Okay. When you're working with younger players, they have an incredible excitement that happens whenever they see a fall in their part because it's so jazzy. So they get all excited and they start to fall before they've even produced a good tone. So you can see how I've tied this 8th note to another 8th note here, just to make sure that we don't fall before this thing has really spoken at the pitch that it's supposed to. And if you listen to the recording, I'm going to slow this down to 50%. The fall doesn't begin before beat 3. So making that little adjustment there, an 8th note tied to an 8th note and then the fall, is going to get even young players to play it correctly. The mature players would do it correctly without that little bit of information. But, you know, it's worth putting on the page. Let's listen to the next 2-bar phrase. Dot, dweeda. Dot, we know how to do that. You can see how important this particular articulation is. Dot, dweeda, for that dwee, dwee. There's a little bit of a scoop into beat 4. We need to find a new articulation. This is one that we're going to use so frequently that I advise you to do what I'm about to do. Grab it, this is the one I like, and move it up from the move up switch. Put it all the way up to the top of this grid and leave it in the number 1 spot. I'm going to select it and put it into place. The and of 4 once again gets a little bump, as we would expect in the jazz idiom. Here's the next 2-bar phrase. Dwa dot da doo da dot dot. So this note is long, right here. This is long. This is long. This one has got the tent accent. Dwa dot da doo da. We accent this exactly as we would expect. There's another little scoop going into beat 1. Let's grab that. And over here in measure 34, these are clearly dot, dot. A couple of, I'm sorry, let's do this first. Grab those like that. And then I'm going to copy all that articulation on down by just... Okay, last 2 bars. Long, short, long, dwee, dot. So once again, we've got a long, a tent, a long, a scoop, whoops, and a tent. I should have let it play. This very last beat is also a tent. I'm going to listen to the last 2-bar phrase. At first when I listened to this, I thought that the last note had a bow, a little fall after it. But then upon listening with headphones, I realized it was just the guitarist, bow, falling, and the horns were just doing a 10th accent. Well, people, there you have it. We have scratched the surface, but we've given it a jolly good deep scratch. I hope you got something good out of this. Articulations. I'll tell you, if you're a guitarist, pianist, bassist, drummer, and you find yourself doing this stuff, be curious. Try some things. Put them on the page. Talk to your horn players and say, did I write that correctly? Does that do what I think it should do? It's a good quest to be on. I hope you got something out of this. We'll catch you next time.
It's just begun. Yeah.